If we're not able to open markets to the United States, we would have to destroy a portion of their potatoes, and it would be very unfortunate, and nobody wants that.
Imagine a world where something as simple as a potato could spark an economic unraveling. That's exactly what's happening right now between the US and Canada, two neighbors who shared fries and trade deals for decades. In just 4 months, over 140,000 tons of Canadian potatoes have vanished from American markets. No loud protests, no fiery speeches, just a quiet disappearance. The reason? A 35% tariff slapped on Canadian potatoes by the US on April 2, 2025. Overnight, a 22 bag of spuds jumped to 30, and a plate of diner fries went from $3.50 to $5.25. While Americans are shelling out more for lackluster fries, Canada's response was calm but calculated. Their prime minister hopped a plane to Asia, inked a $1.6 billion trade deal, and didn't look back. Warehouses are sitting empty, farmers are scaling back, and diners are serving smaller portions. This isn't just about potatoes. It's about what happens when you tax your closest partner and expect them to stick around. For years, the flow of potatoes from Canada to the US was as steady as a Midwest winter. In 2024, Canada sent 350,000 metric tons of potatoes across the border, enough to keep 17 million American households fed with fries, hash browns, and mashed spuds. Places like Minnesota and Wisconsin didn't just rely on these potatoes. They were part of the culture, as essential to local diners as ketchup and coffee. This wasn't just trade. It was a rhythm, a partnership that kept plates full and prices low. For decades, Canadian potatoes crossed the border without drama, fueling everything from fast food chains to mom-and-pop joints. But then came the tariff. A 35% tax dropped without warning or negotiation. According to Agriculture Canada's July 2025 report, this led to a 41% collapse in potato exports to the US. In a single quarter, a drop not seen since the 1980s. It wasn't a loud breakup, it was a silent exit, like a friend who stops calling after one too many slights. The math tells a brutal story. A 25-ton shipment of frozen fries, once worth $32,000, now carries an extra $11,200 in taxes. That's a 35% hit on a food Americans eat more than most vegetables combined. The USDA's Food Pricing Index for July 2025 shows the cost of a serving of fries jumping from $3.50 to $5.25 in just 3 months. This isn't inflation creeping in. It's a policy choice that's jacking up prices and leaving a bad taste. Restaurants, caught in the squeeze, are swapping out high-quality Canadian potatoes for cheaper domestic ones. The result? Fries that are soggy, unevenly cooked, or carry a weird chemical aftertaste. Customers are noticing, and they're not happy. Small diners are shrinking portions or rewriting menus to avoid passing on the full cost, because charging $5 for a side of fries risks losing loyal patrons. The tariff was sold as a move for trade fairness, but it's left American plates with less flavor and higher bills. What stings even more is how little warning Canada got. No bilateral talks, no heads up, just a sudden tax wall thrown up by Washington. The US called it strategy, but it felt more like a jab at a trusted partner. When you hit your neighbor with a 35% tax on something as basic as potatoes, don't be shocked when they stop showing up. Canadian processors like McCain and Cavendish, who used to send thousands of fry containers to the US each month, have quietly dialed back. Farmers in Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Alberta are planting less, with some cutting acreage by 15 to 25% this season, according to Statistics Canada's July 2025 farm update. Not because of bad weather or pests, but because their biggest buyer, America, made it too expensive to keep the trucks rolling. Cold storage units sit empty, and contracts with farmers are shrinking. It's not a dramatic standoff, it's a slow, deliberate retreat. While the US plays hardball, Canada's playing chess. Instead of firing back with tariffs or public complaints, Ottawa got to work redirecting its potato industry. Processors are shifting inventory to Canadian grocery stores and co-ops, keeping retail prices steady at $4.250 to $4.299 per bag, according to Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's July 2025 Food System Review. That's a stark contrast to the price spikes hitting American consumers. Surplus potatoes are also finding new homes, with over 12,000 tons redirected to food banks and community kitchens in New Brunswick and Manitoba in a single quarter, per Food Banks Canada's July 2025 report. For Canadian families, this means a few extra bucks for milk or bread, small savings that add up in a tight economy. It's a practical pivot, done without fanfare or finger-pointing, showing that Canada's not interested in fighting over fries when they can feed their own people instead. But Canada's not stopping at home. They're looking far beyond the US, building new trade bridges with Asia and beyond. Since late 2024, Ottawa has been quietly expanding its agricultural reach, signing a $1.6 billion deal with Japan, South Korea, and Indonesia for processed potatoes and frozen goods, according to Global Affairs Canada's July 2025 trade brief. The numbers are already showing results. Prince Edward Island shipped $8 million worth of fresh potatoes to Indonesia in 2024, with more on the way. Thailand has become Canada's largest non-US potato buyer, importing over 4 million in fresh and seed spuds. Caribbean nations like Trinidad and Panama are also stepping up, each purchasing over 13 million worth. This isn't just about moving product, it's about building a new system. In Charlottetown, a freezing facility added a new processing line for a Japanese distributor, creating 45 jobs and boosting local purchases by 15%, even using lower-grade potatoes that once went to livestock. It's resilience, not revenge, and it's proof that Canada's not waiting for the US to change its mind. This pivot, though, isn't without hurdles. Shipping potatoes to Asia is no easy feat. Agriculture. Canada's July 2025 Export Logistics Review points out that Canada lacks direct cold chain routes to major hubs like Tokyo or Jakarta, making shipping 20 to 35% more expensive per ton than trucking to Buffalo. South Korea, despite a free trade agreement, still hasn't cleared fresh Canadian potatoes due to quarantine rules, so fries are moving, but raw spuds are stuck. Big players like McCain can afford to build new supply chains, but smaller farmers are often left tethered to processors who control prices and markets. Diversifying sounds like a great plan until you're a small grower waiting for a ship that only sails once a month. New markets take time, infrastructure takes money, and not every farmer has the resources to ride out the transition. Canada's moving forward, but it's a complicated road. On the American side, the fallout is just as messy. Restaurants in states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan are struggling with domestic potatoes that don't measure up. The USDA's July 2025 agricultural outlook reports a 10 to 18% drop in potato product quality satisfaction, with fries that don't crisp right or spoil faster. Fast food joints are seeing fewer customers, not because people are eating healthier, but because the fries just aren't worth it. Big chains can negotiate bulk deals to cushion the blow, but small diners and cafeterias are getting crushed. Margins are disappearing, and some are cutting portions or raising prices just to stay afloat. The ripple effect stretches from idle tractors in Canada to frustrated drive-thru workers in the Midwest, all because of a policy signed in a quiet DC office that didn't account for the real-world cost. This isn't just about potatoes, it's about trust. Canada didn't slam the door or start a trade war, they just stopped showing up. The World Trade Monitor's July 2025 data shows a 41.7% drop in Canadian potato exports to the US, with overall US potato imports down 19% due to what economists call policy-induced friction. But friction doesn't capture the half of it. When you tax your closest partner like they're a threat, you're not just raising prices, you're breaking a bond. Canada's not fighting back with tariffs or headlines, they're building new markets and feeding their own people. It's a quiet exit, and that's what makes it so powerful. The U.S. Potato Association's July 2025 policy brief puts it plainly: short-term protectionism might win political points, but the long-term damage to relationships is harder to fix. Think about what this means. For years, Canada was America's trusted partner, sending potatoes across the border like clockwork. But one tariff, one unilateral move, and that trust started to fray. It's not about loud betrayals or dramatic standoffs. It's about the slow fade of reliability. Warehouses going dark, deals signed elsewhere, and fries that don't taste the same. The US thought it could flex its muscle, but Canada's response was smarter. They didn't argue, they adapted. And now, while American diners pay more for subpar spuds, Canada's building a future that doesn't depend on its neighbors' whims. Is this just a temporary hiccup or the start of a permanent shift? Will Canada come back to the table? Or is this the quietest trade breakup North America's ever seen? Drop your thoughts below, because this story's about more than potatoes. It's about what happens when trust gets taxed.